Okay, the mechanical, the logistics, and I think that's about all we've taken care of so far. But we're having a great time, aren't we? Hey, Scott Stanfield. And it's probably the first time you've heard a song based on the brothers Karamazov or Karamazov, depending on what part of the Russian steppes you're from. I'm not sure about that. Tonight, as I said, we have a great program. This is the Wesleyan program, connections of all kinds, present, future, past, who knows. Mary Hickman, who I just actually officially met last week, but have heard her read before, is a newcomer in the area, but we want to give her a warm welcome. She has a couple of books out. She has one here, and I think Twyla has her newest book in the back with her husband Tom guarding the pile, so he's busy too. We will take a break after Mary, of course, because you get to visit and find out who you're sitting with. It may not be your spouse. You may be surprised. You may not be surprised. I don't know. It depends on how that goes. But with Mary, she's going to come up. She's going to read, I don't know, 20 minutes or an hour, somewhere in between there. 20, 25 minutes in that range, and then we'll take a break for book signings, book tradings, however you want to do that. That's up to the writers, of course, and the songwriters to go along with that. So without further ado, Mary Hickman.
So exciting to be reading at Mojava, my second office, where I spend much of my money and free time. So I'm especially excited to be reading with Twyla Hansen, the state poet of Nebraska. I can't wait to hear the poems from the new book. I've been excited all week about this. I wanted to start by declaring myself an official Nebraskan. Just you guys know. I'm now in the Nebraska anthology, so I'm official. There was a launch reading for it on Sunday, and I think a lot of you were there. I had many faces. And quite a few people were mentioning Don Welch. He's a poet that he taught out in Kearney for a long time, and he was wonderful. I lived in Kearney for a year, and we got to be good friends then. And I wrote a lot of poems about the meadows, the geese, the cows. You can really hear the lowing of the cows on their way to the slaughterhouse in Kearney. One of the features. The trains, I have many train poems. And there's a geese poem in the anthology, so I thought I would start off with this in honor of Don Welch. Geese Rising. Bring my middle to thee, isosceles, where I become bees, acting like geese, wings, really pins, and lock my waist into sky, arias and more silver, really chalk that charts birds ascending in a V of voice where I strive to be at perfect rights with their aerial beaks. If you will carry me, she says. If you will carry me, the geese repeat, and you should echo. And then the other poem I'm going to read from here, I actually wrote in Idaho, but my grandmother is from Nebraska. She was born in Lincoln, and my mom swears she was the first cesarean section performed in Lincoln, my grandmother, but I don't have historical facts to back this up, so perhaps she was, and she lived in Hastings. That family farm they had hard times, and it got repossessed, and I was thinking about this happening again and again in families that I know, and I wrote this poem right after the crash of 2008 when I knew a lot of people in that same situation with their ranches. Okay. Remembering animals. It's like recovering a horse from a sale. How it feels to lengthen, all neck, spine to strengthen. 2. Replanting a meadow. I listen to a Saturday track, waiting for Sunday. 3. I paint animals, necks stretched, heads thrown back. I think in this one, the mane drips a black like cartographer's ink. And I'm really grateful to be in this anthology. And it has an amazing introduction by Twyla, poems by many of the amazing poets in this room also. So check this out. So I feel like the next poem I'm going to read is maybe a downer after the happy music, but it goes with the poem I just read. I find myself rewriting things, trying to really get to what I was trying to say before. And along with the financial crisis of 2008, my sister and her husband, they lost their ranch. And it led to my brother-in-law's suicide. And And I had had an uncle who, when he was young, he had also hung himself, and I was just trying to figure out, how do you even write about this kind of thing? And I entered it through the work of the photographer Sally Mann. If you've ever seen her photos, they're all about her children growing up. And after I'd seen those, I thought about how she just goes for it. She takes whatever's around and she makes art out of it, and she kind of worries about the consequences later. And she ends up making really haunting, beautiful portraits of her family. So this poem considers a lot of those things. The photo does not exhaust itself. This photo is about family. In the photo, he's 16. His horse stands with loose reins beside an alpine lake. The water looks less like water than sky, and even in the heat of August, my father rests just below the snow line. Although it's not polite to speak about family, I don't mind. I go ahead and pick up what's around. There's a moment just before embarking on a portrait when there's just enough time to make a quick prayer. I am desperate to fear the elation of the image. I want to know the moment I've begun. The event shown in the image I am making of my father, the event or theme, I don't know what to call it, is an instant in a cemetery. You stop in front of a flooded hole and gaze in. You see the bottom of an alpine lake. You see the instant of that fantasy, or you see the instant of what might be memory, which in another instant will be gone. No one wants me to mention my father's youngest brother. He was a lonely child. Playing in the barn, he hung himself. Before my grandfather died, he showed me a wooden box shaped like a pyramid. It had belonged to my uncle and held 4 horses. As I reached for the plastic horses, my grandfather started to cry, whispering. It was very sad when Scott was young and caught an illness in his throat. I don't want to make a clear image. I spend enormous amounts of time looking for photos with just the right amount of decrepitude. The phantasm of the rainy cemetery recurs. It gives rise to an image I thought might be good. A memory that must be something more than its subject, that must permit me to see more than what is there. I have already seen something like it before. The earth doesn't care where a death occurs. Its job is to efface and renew. The land isn't going to remember by itself, but the image will. This photo has the right feeling. There are upright stones and old statues. It has the solitary, well-placed trees that we might identify with cemeteries. All the shooting is strictly documentary, very straight photography. It's the process that Brady used in the Civil War and Fenton and Gardner used out west with their mule teams. You have to wait for the right light, and you capture what is there. I don't know if it is even possible to make an image of this kind of family tragedy. I know it is not possible to allow myself to name those who have died in the photo. Photography wants to prove there is only one world, not many, one visible world. But that is only a plea made by photography, not a conclusion. These pale, nearly white images, an abandoned well or fallen tree evoke loss. My father pastes new paper to the walls in the cabin and replanks the porch, which offers a view across the mountains to the peaks. I am left struggling with my fragile perception, filling in the gaps with imagined scenarios. The photo admits the light leaks and flaws of process. These distortions, these blotches or scratches, they matter. I learned from a doctor that collodion, a chemical essential to my work, was used for surgery in the Civil War to bind wounds. I set the lenses on the lake's edge. Next, I acquire material from the lake floor. I want to take a snapshot of the lake floor. I include only what might have really been seen there at a given instance. I would dredge a living moment from the water. And with that poem, there's so much about the mountains and the lakes, because I was inspired to write this by coming across all these old photos of my grandparents and my dad and his brothers going on these horse trips up into the mountains. They used to take their horses and their pack teams up into the mountains for days at a time and fish and ride. And those are the last images of my uncle before he hung himself. So I felt very connected to Sally Mann's idea of the image as preservation. I found out that just this last year, after the book was written and went to the printers, Sally Mann's oldest son killed himself. And so I felt like something embedded in the work that now it has even more kind of resonance for me, thinking about her grief with that. So, downer poem. All right. read you one about all of the times that I have almost died. That will be more fun. I don't know if you know anybody clumsy, like really clumsy. If you didn't before, you do now. Do we have any like super clumsy people out there? All right, you are my people. We will keep each other alive. I see Grace raising her hand. Yeah, actually, Grace, I'm gonna believe that about you after this year. Yeah. Okay, so this looks at the dance, and this is also for my new friend Vicky, who is a dance therapist. And it looks at the dance of Kazuo Ono. He was a Japanese Buto dancer, and that's a Japanese dance form where instead of the kind of high, graceful, beautiful, strong athleticism of Western dance, it searches for the kind of broken, twisted, diseased forms in a kind of avant-garde dance in Japan post-World War II. So you can see why they might be wanting to think about that, the body in its kind of distortions and cripplings after the atomic bombs. I wrote this poem the day that I found out he had died. He was the hero of mine. I have had many near-death experiences. Watching Kazuo Ono dancing Mother, I end up thinking, oh mama, mama, my turtle dove. Only fairy tales come to mind. The song in the juniper tree, sung by the murdered son, become a bird. My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister Marlene gathered my bones, tied them in a scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. In Mother, when the music stops, the spotlight widens to reveal an audience perfectly stilled. It sounds as if Kazuo calls up North Sea winds from every direction, calls up a landscape of ragged cliffs and swells. Kazuo's rawness must be the rawness of the sea. He renders each pulsating, twisting move of jellyfish in dance. How human bodies become. He has seen thousands of jellies circling, victims of hunger or disease, soldiers buried at sea, men he knew in the war. He was a prisoner of war. Today was Tuesday, and yesterday was Wednesday. They confirmed Wednesday that he died on Tuesday. Is Tuesday in Japan, Wednesday here? In Mother, the gestures are not eroticism, not desire, but percussive violence. He stamps ankles into strength. The dance demands he unlearn his upright body, unlock shoulder from spine, disarticulate each confined, trained joint. In Buto, bodies distort beyond etiquette and beyond beauty, become crippled ships bent forest floor. He must unfold his body, loosen the face, and prepare for a face made utterly unfamiliar. Tracking his own corpse, he finds a face so fixed even agony cannot be found there. He dances the sharp chirping of insects, the animals lowing, and thus unmoors his body. People say many things about Kazuo's body. It is a corpse standing, an outcry from somewhere outside the culture of flesh. I find working from life so intimidating. I find it hard to do. I have had many near-death experiences, moments when I certainly might have died. On a mountain road near Taiwan's north coast, I bent over a cliff edge to pick flowers. Pardon me. I bent over a cliff edge to pick flowers and fell 30 feet. When I looked up, my companion gestured for me to stay still. He was yelling, "Don't move." I moved and felt myself drop 6 inches. Only branches supported me, and below, the cliff roped in mist. As Kazuo builds a dance, it's like adding layers of flesh. I hesitate to create a myth about Kazuo since we have to continue his endeavors. He needed a recipient. We have to be receptive. There is a moment when the image starts to breathe. There is something unsettled about the image, like form passing into a gesture that is alive. 8 ghostly white bodies emerge from the sea and scramble over the rocks. They move sideways over the sharp rocks. They unfurl long red ribbons from their mouths, something that words can't touch. Exploring caves underwater, squeezing through smaller and smaller openings, but always sure there would be another opening ahead, I was diving without equipment. I saw the reef and a school of squid just beyond. When my lungful of air began to run out, I tried to surface, and I saw a hole in the rock leading up. As I swam, the opening narrowed. I had no air left to go back the way I'd come or look for another way, but I couldn't get through. I thought I'd pass out and drown. I forced myself to push my body upward and shoved my body through the tube of rock until I was scraped and bleeding, but breaking the surface. I dragged my body to the surface. I lived. I don't know if anyone went to the library fundraiser, True Stories Live. It was very exciting, and I was asked to do a True Stories Live about, some exciting event in my life. And I told a series of these near-death experiences that are not even in here. And then afterwards, everybody came up looking very concerned for me, offering me to walk me to my car. Okay, for my last poem, I think I would like to read a poem I've never tried to read in public. And I want to read this for my students that are here. Thanks for coming, guys. And we were talking about, when Brenda Shaughnessy was visiting with my class, we were talking about failed poems. They're all now desperate to see this horrible poem I spent 6 months writing about a dog just running around a barren field and collapsing and getting up and running around and collapsing. I mean, and the poem is enacting its own failure in that. I should have known. I was desperate for it to work, and I would read it to anyone that would listen, and they would all give me that same look like, don't do it. And so I abandoned it. This is a poem that I had that experience with that I think I finally got working, and then liked it so much I put it as the last poem in the book. So you can judge whether or not. You can give me those looks afterwards if you need to. I grew up in China and Hong Kong and Taiwan. I went to high school in Taiwan, and we used to hitchhike down to the beach. I mean, we're at boarding school, no parents around, and camp out on the beach, so part of this takes place there. Helen. Helen is, of course, that Helen of Sparta, Helen of Troy, Helena hated of Greece. In a dream or a trance she left Troy. She finds herself in Egypt. And that's HD. You must be patient, remembering. You can choose where. We are going to see whatever we haven't seen, and maybe that means traveling down instead of across. Some say Taiwan gets better surf than China's southern beaches because it is out in the Pacific Ocean and exposed to larger swells. We camped at Baishawan, which means White Sands Beach. Soon Helen's skin peeled off in one snaking tube, leaving behind pink, stinging surface. I lived in the South, and there were always rich oil kids around. One of the great things about Taiwan, something not really true of China, is that there are a lot of small beaches where you can surf on your own. You have to watch the weather. Once, at Baisha, I tried to save a surfer who was drowning. I tried desperately to save him for almost 20 minutes, but he didn't make it. Paradise, that idea of being together, of fusion, or whatever it might look like. Here there is peace for Helena, Helena hated of all Greeks. For Helen, the ocean is a way to talk about raw force. Of course, the deep sea is unknown. More people have traveled into space than have gone down to those abyssal depths, she says. This work is work I made as we tread. While out on the coast, I kept cutting into the work, drawing over it. After living overseas for more than a decade, I had been altered in the way I had to be altered in order to enter a new lexicon, to become at once a one and not one of local culture. Whatever happened to me, I never felt out of place, like I shouldn't be here in this vertigo of inducing. A female traveler is a jewel-encrusted fan, Helen. She's standing on the beach, but the beach has turned to scrub brush, or the tide is just out and silver is beneath the water. She sheds a silver snakeskin, broken speech. We see life and call it beauty. It is magnificent, wonderful. Remembering this scene, I see fever in her face. The sheen is so plasticine, it recalls salt eaters, salmon, inky saturation, smudges, staining. It retells our whole history, a record of preparations, and each notation we put in place so that we remember. Who are we? Who directs us? And after traveling so long together, yes, it's the luminous nothing, that at the time is very real, but later, trying to hold it still for a moment, it's then that we have reached for, or that we are straining toward, some first sight of home. Thank you.